Hi, everybody, and welcome to Accounting and Accountability. My name is Dr. Amanda White. I am the subject coordinator for AAA at UTS. And this week I have a very special guest host with me while Nelson is in Norway for this week and next week. I have somebody who is a textbook writer. She's a YouTube creator. She's a researcher. She's a fantastic teacher. Big welcome to Dr. Victoria Clout from this small university you may have heard of called the University of New South Wales. Victoria, welcome.
Thanks, Amanda. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Long time watcher.
First time host, but maybe, I'm glad to have somebody to co-host with this week. How are you doing? You've got a beautiful tropical background there. Are you on vacation right now or are you at work?
I'm on annual leave this week.
Nice.
My parents are visiting me from Perth.
Fantastic. My kids have gone to vacation care. We did last week at home, but man, even though I'm still checking my emails and things, it is quite hard to do your job and be on leave, or, supposedly supposed to be on leave. So we have two fantastic stories today. And the first one, if you've been under a rock, then you will not have heard that there was a data breach or a data hack at Optus. They are Australia's second largest telecommunications company. We have Telstra, we have Optus, we have a whole range of other Vodafone and smaller resellers, but there was a big hack resulting in identity details of tens of thousands of Australians being shared potentially on the internet, including driver's license numbers and passport numbers. Besides the inconvenience, Victoria, what are the potential impacts to Optus of being involved in such a large data breach?
Well, they're going to come under more regulatory scrutiny. The Privacy Act is likely to be updated. Also, audits, your favorite topic, Amanda, auditing. They're going to have lots of auditing scrutiny on all of their systems, and also all of the peers, all the other telcos are probably going to come under a lot more audit scrutiny, so maybe high audit fees, longer audit process.
There's also going to be a big damage to reputation. We don't have any figures yet about how many customers may have left Optus as a result of this. So there's damage to reputation, lost customers as well. And this is going to have a long-term revenue impact because it's not like you go into Optus and you buy one thing once. You have this recurring monthly revenue. So it's going to be long-term issues through the phone, internet. I think you can get your Foxtel and streaming services also through them. Now, the hackers did ransom Optus and said, hey, we'll give you all your data back for a certain amount, and they have not paid that. But they do need to pay for any of the costs potentially for the cleanup. And the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, I read this I think it might have been The Guardian, he confirmed that Optus was going to pay for any passport reissues. So how is this going to affect the accounting, the fact that they're going to have all of these costs that they need to think of in the future?
Yeah, it's going to be this massive, like one-time set of costs. They're probably going to try and highlight these are non-reoccurring if they have NonGAP numbers, which is the profit minus the bad things.
So non-GAAP. So GAAP is really how we prepare our accounting under the accounting standards. And when you have non-GAAP reporting, it's like the company is just reporting however it likes. There are no rules here.
Without rules. So they'll probably go up all these one-time losses and expenses they had to incur. And also there's probably going to be a long tail end of those expenses. So it might even drag out 2 or 3 years and not really matching any revenue. So
which is going to bring in, students will know that there's the matching principle. When we have revenue, we want to have expenses sort of incurred in close to the same period. And so we're going to have to put aside money in what we call provisions. So it's a liability of things we think we're pretty certain we're going to have to pay for, which is going to be reissue of driver's licenses, reissue of passports. And some people might not even realize that their data may have been exposed until they get the message. It could take a long time to reorganize for a new passport as well. You got to get the right photos, fill in the forms. If your passport has lapsed, it's a whole other process. So you're right in that this might not just be this one-time thing, but it could be years of which there is a tail end. There's also potential lawsuits. I read something in the paper that there is a possibility also of lawsuits. And I think one law firm is already starting to get people together for a class action lawsuit in which you might have to have a contingent liability. And now, Victoria, are contingent liabilities recorded on the balance sheet?
No, they're not.
So it's just a little note.
It's in the notes, and it can be also hidden. So within the notes, it can be very vague. Because I had a class of students look at General Motors, and we were interested in a particular legal case of dispute about tires, and General Motors had kind of hidden it, and they said we're being sued in several states of the United States for undefined reasons. So it can be even more hidden in the notes than you might expect.
So this is why, when you're an accountant, you're an auditor, or you're an investor, it's really important to dig into these companies and understand the financial statements so that you can make good choices if you're investing. There was also a news story this week on the ABC. I'll link that to the description in the description of the video, that there's also been a report of spikes in hackers lodging false tax returns and superannuation claims using your personal data. So keep an eye on your, make sure that you've got access to your email that is linked to any superannuation funds or any tax returns. And just, if you get one of those MyGov letters that says, hey, you've, received a tax refund, or just check that was you, because there has been a spike in false reports using this identity documentation. Now, today is the first Tuesday of the month. It is going to be the Reserve Bank meeting today, of which they're expecting to increase interest rates by potentially another 0.5%. So we've seen average Sydney mortgages go up probably close to $1,000 over the last year. Compounding on top of that is that there's a tax on fuel. So when you go, people import fuel, and before it gets to the pump, the government taxes it. So it taxes fuel, it taxes a whole range of other goods, it taxes tobacco, but there's a thing, the fuel tax is called the fuel excise. And because of the Russian situation, in which they've shut off a lot of gas into Europe, there's also a lot of turmoil. We've seen oil prices increase significantly. And that means that the government said, well, people were quite worried about inflation and COVID, so they cut fuel excise tax by 50%. But now that tax relief is going away, and they're going to the fuel tax excise is going right back up to the full rate. Victoria, what's this going to mean for, the flow-on effects once the price of fuel goes up?
Yeah, so there's going to be like within the whole kind of supply chain. We can think about the raw materials, and then wholesalers, retailers, and interestingly, there was discussion on the radio about the profit so each of those, like petrol stations, they have to have a margin as well. So we can see throughout the supply chain, they'll be trying to pick up those costs and still trying to have profitable petrol stations, because surprisingly, they don't just make their money on all of the food, and a lot of people ignore it, go straight to the checkout and buy their fuel, which is what I tend to do.
I think it's only been once or twice where at like 11 o'clock at night, I realize I have no bread for sandwiches for school the next day, that I might go out to a fuel station, especially since like my local Woolies is open till quite late. And so you're right, there's this huge flow on effect, and it's going to start from the farmers who need fuel to be able to, run tractors in fields, collect and harvest all of that, right through to, machines and everything along the supply chain. So we're going to see this flow on into increases in prices for everything. But we've got to be a real risk. There's a big issue in the US at the moment around price gouging, in which businesses are saying, well, people are already expecting prices to go up, so maybe we'll just increase them by a little bit more, and perhaps what we call profit gouge a little bit. So I'm sure that there'll be a lot of accountants doing some accounting researchers out there, because we have models that predict profit. based on a whole range of different things and different factors, and say, look, is this an abnormal increase in profit or a regular increase in profit? And this is also going to hit remote and rural communities as well. So if you're living outside of a metropolitan city, whether that's Wagga Wagga or Lightning Ridge, or even further off in remote Indigenous communities, those extra fuel costs are just going to compound for everybody. So Victoria, if you're working as an accountant and you're starting to see all of these increases in prices, we've got inflation, what sort of changes are you going to need to consider from the accounting perspective?
Yeah, so you might want to start off with like budgets, cost volume profit kind of analysis, because are you selling your product at the right price kind of thing? Because you don't want to suddenly be selling at a loss. And because this can sometimes happen, like especially with restaurants, when all of their inputs into the meal that they're making change in price. They might, if they're selling, let's say they're like a avocado and toast for $10, and then suddenly the avocado goes up, then there could be, if they continue to sell at $10, they're selling essentially at a loss. So they'll have to like increase, like, and calculate and go, oh, maybe it's $20 now for the avocado toast.
And we're going to have fixed costs increase as well, because with increasing fuel prices, increasing inflation, we're going to see electricity costs go up, rent for business premises and for individuals, rent prices have really significantly increased. And so it's all sort of compounding together. And at the same time, we've got the Reserve Bank trying to increase interest rates to put a lid on inflation, which risks us. And it's this fine balance. I don't think there's any, I'd hate to be in the Reserve Bank's shoes right now. There's no easy way to say this is the magic increase that's going to curb inflation and prevent us from going into a recession. Because if we go into a recession, it's potentially going to exacerbate issues, because fuel prices are still going to, and energy prices are still going to stay high, but people are going to have less jobs. And it's just going to, make my timer is stay way close to time. It's going to create a whole lot of flow on effects. So, personally, are you changing any of your habits right now because of the changes in prices?
Well, earlier on in the year, when inflationary pressures started to kick in and the wages are not increasing at universities, I looked at my own personal budget, and I canceled 2 of my subscription services, and I'm just living without those. And then I'm even thinking to cancel Netflix, because I tend to only watch garbage on Netflix.
Now I have to ask, because you and I are both Star Wars fans.
Yes.
Did you cancel your Disney Plus?
No, that's non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable, yeah. As a parent with kids, Disney Plus is our savior. But it is one of those things where, I moved just recently from a fixed interest rate into the variable, and boy, wow, like a fixed rate from, I think it was 3 years ago, saw hundreds of dollars increase in our variable rate that we're, how much we're going to pay for our mortgage. So I'm looking at things. I said to kids, okay, we're going to move to like 1 vegetarian meal a week. And they're like, I don't like the sound. So I've tried them on the fake meat sausages, like the plant-based sausages. And
tofu sausages, my tip is that they have the same sort of texture.
Okay, I'll have to try that. So we tried one that was plant-based, and the kids did not have a bar of it. And then they were trying to feed it to my dog, and she was looking at this sausage going, this does not taste right. Like, she took a bite and spat it out. So, lots of other things. If you're a uni student, Victoria, at UNSW, are there like microwaves and places where students can get hot water and things like that on campus?
Yeah, I've got loads of those, especially in the quadrangle building.
Perfect. So, buy your cup of noodles. Make sure
Yeah.
you have you have your reusable chopsticks. Bring your lunch. At my office, we have like a sandwich press, so I might bring some more of that and try and minimize the eating out, because I think that's where, like, the buy a coffee here and there,
Yeah,
that's where I really get to.
it really adds up, because if it's because you think, oh, it's $4 a day. Well, $4, that's okay. $4 times,
5, if you're going 5 days a week. Yep. Or even lunch.
50
So,
weeks of the year, and then you go, that's a lot of money.
yeah. So I think sometimes if I'm really, banh mi is my like cheap lunch. So that's always good. But if you wanted to go really cheap and there's a 7-Eleven near you, I think they still have like $3 sandwiches at a 7-Eleven. But even 7-Eleven has moved from $1 coffee to $2 coffee. So they've realized that $1 was not sustainable. And so they've moved to $2. Fantastic. Well, I want to thank Victoria for being a fantastic co-host. She's going to be back next week. So if you have any questions about UNSW, then she can answer those next week. But otherwise, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. See you next time.